Welcome to Ways to Boost Your Super Before Retiring. Tonight's webinar will run for about an hour. It's being recorded and will be available on our website shortly. I'm Zoe Nikakis and I'm part of First Super's marketing team. We're going to start with an acknowledgement of country. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and paying my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples attending this event. Firstly, thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to be here. We encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions are anonymous and we will do our very best to answer them all. Before handing over to our financial planning team, there are a couple of important housekeeping items I need to cover. The agenda. On tonight's agenda, the financial advice team will cover topics such as information about First Super, question, what does your retirement look like? And will you have enough to retire? How to build your super while working, and then they'll take your questions. Onto the disclaimer, as always. The content in this presentation has been prepared by First Super and may not be used or reproduced without prior written consent. The information in this presentation is accurate as of today's date. Financial advice services. First Super has engaged industry fund services to provide financial advice to our members, and all our financial planners are authorised representatives of IFS. Further information regarding the cost of advice is set out in our financial services guide. Onto the general advice warning. The information in this presentation tonight explains concepts, strategies and ideas in a general way. If you feel it could be applicable to your personal situation, we recommend you obtain financial advice before taking any action. Now, before I introduce the team, just a little bit about us at First Super. We're an industry super fund with 47,000 members and $3.6 billion in funds under management. We have strong industry links, a dedicated member services team, and we provide local personalised service. So you can take us with you for life. From accumulation, transition to retirement, account-based pension, and much more. We also have an app coming in 2023, so stay tuned for that. Now let's get on with it. Joining us tonight is Andrew Jewell, our Executive Manager, Financial Advice and Education. Next up, we've got Jason Bruce, one of our financial planners. And finally, Daniela Baltianu, also our financial planner. Please welcome Andrew.
Thank you very much, Zoe, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. As Zoe said, the idea of this webinar is actually to explain to our members, if they're thinking about retiring, especially in the next 2 or 5 years, do I have enough to retire on? And consequently, is that going to be enough for me to survive on during my retirement years? And if it's not going to be, well, what are my options? What are things that I can do to boost my superannuation between now and when I intend to retire? So where we normally start from a financial advice team is when we're talking to our members that are thinking about this and seeking such answers, is that we start to talk to them about retirement. So first of all, let's talk about retirement and what kind of lifestyles is it that people are seeking to do. We refer to something called the ASPA Retirement Standard. ASPA stands for the Australian Super Fund Association, and they're a research company, and they go out and they actually conduct a research every 3 months with retirees and ask them about how they're spending their money. And they start to get right down into the detail, how much they're spending on petrol, groceries, energy bills, how frequently are they going out to dinner, catching up with friends, paying for holidays, and so forth. And what they come up with is 2 models. One is called a comfortable lifestyle and a modest lifestyle. So let's start with that first, and let's go with the modest lifestyle. And Daniela, can you just explain to me, what does ASPA mean, or what do we mean when we say modest lifestyle?
Thank you, Andy, for the question. And just as you've mentioned before, when we are meeting our members, we do start with a conversation about what their retirement look like and what budget might they require to live off. So some people, they have a particular budget in place, or in mind, others are unsure, and that's when we obviously raise that as per retirement standard. Overall, a modest retirement encapsulates people who are more budget conscious and are more, housebound. Think a bit of gardening, some fishing, some local trips and holidays, nothing, extravagant. This kind of lifestyle doesn't account for usually overseas trips. The retirees living on a modest lifestyle, they're quite possibly not interested in the trips, or they potentially completed them when they were still earning an income. So kind of gotten them out of the system already, so to speak. The couples and singles on a modest lifestyle, they spend more time with their families, possibly doing a bit of babysitting with their grandkids. They might have a health insurance, but it's just at a standard level, so no bells and whistles attached to it. Now, they're not chasing the latest phone model or car model, so they're just happy with, budget standard things. So overall, they live a decent lifestyle without having, all of the luxuries.
All right, thank you very much. A good explanation on that. So then, Jason, the other model that Asper referred to, or that we do, the comfortable lifestyle, what does that actually entail? How does it differ?
Yeah, so when we speak to members about a comfortable lifestyle, I mean, comfortable is different for everyone, and people may be comfortable on the modest lifestyle, but what we really refer to it as the active lifestyle. So as Daniela mentioned, in the modest lifestyle, you're sort of more of a bit of a homebody, whereas the comfortable lifestyle, you're really active in your social activities particular. It can be a lot of travel, a lot of interstate, overseas travel, active socially, going out for dinner, maybe multiple times a week, going out to the footy or whatever events that may interest you. But it's also having sort of those finer things in life as well a little bit. So it's the private health insurance that you're going to maintain. You may have a car or two if you're a couple that you're going to upgrade the home as well throughout retirement, maybe once or twice. So it's active in terms of your social life, but also very comfortable in terms of not worrying about bills and not being bill conscious in your day-to-day activities as well.
All right, thank you very much. So what we're going to do now is just take a quick poll for all the people that are attending. And from those descriptions, which one is it that you're thinking about? Is it that you're thinking about the modest lifestyle, or is it that you were thinking more around the comfortable lifestyle? So let's just take a quick break and to see what people vote. Okay, we got the results coming in. Okay, and let's have a look. All right, so 60% of those that participated said they're looking more for the comfortable lifestyle, and 40% said they're looking for the modest lifestyle. So that's a great start where we are. So naturally, the next question that comes from our members is, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing in retirement. These are the things that I want to enjoy. How much am I going to need? And what kind of income am I going to require? So let's have a look at those. And that's not working for me. Here we go. So Danielle, if I can come back to you, and in regards to this modest lifestyle, on the screen here we can see what the income is for a single and a couple, and potentially what funds are they requiring. And in this instance, it's saying, whether you're a single or a couple, you only need $70,000 in financial assets, and let's just call that super. Can you explain a little bit more about this income, and why is it that you only need about $70,000 then to live this modest lifestyle?
Yes, definitely. So most people who are planning to live a modest lifestyle, they don't usually have too much behind them as far as assets are concerned. So their biggest possession will probably be their house and a super balance accumulated over the years, which again might not necessarily be at a high level either. So based on these assets, quite often they will be eligible for most, if not full amount of the age pension, which will provide them with the basic level of lifestyle. So now to bring them to a modest lifestyle, range, they will only need a small amount to top up from their super. So that's the balance they require for these top-ups doesn't need to be significant. And as it's stated here in the slide, a couple might only need about 70,000 in retirement savings to be able to afford a modest lifestyle for the rest of their lives. And that's, of course, assuming that both of them are receiving the full age pension.
So again, yeah, with these assumptions, and that's a big part of this all, is that, these assumptions that are being made here is that the couple have reached the pension age. And like you say, it's supplementing the majority of their income. So all they're needing to do is draw down on their superannuation $7,000 or $8,000 per annum to top it up to being $30,500 or $44,000 for a couple in that respect. And hence, 70,000 is going to last them another 10 plus years in that scenario around that. But just recently, you met up with some of our members that were retiring, and they were talking about this modest lifestyle. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that interaction you had with our members?
Yes, of course. So I did meet with a couple in recent times. Now, husband was not far from turning 67, and he just retired from workforce. The wife was a bit younger, 63, but she stopped working since she was 60. So for the last 3 years, the husband was the only income earner. So they had a good understanding of, their expenditure and budgets as such. So while working, husband was earning about $65,000 a year, and that was more than enough for them to live off. Going forward, we did discuss what budget they expect and how much they are happy to live off. So they came back to me with $45,000 a year. Superannuation-wise, which again was pretty much their only, big assets, they were sitting on $250,000 joint. Now, they have grandkids. They're looking more into, wanting to spend more time with their families. They're not planning to go overseas because similar story to what I was telling you before, they done all of that in their younger stage. The wife spends quite a bit of time gardening. The husband does go fishing. They both enjoy a meal here or there at the local RSL. So again, $45,000 a year, that's what they said is more than enough for them. Now, for the 4 years until the wife has not reached her age pension age, because we want to top up, again, the husband is eligible for a full age pension, and because we need to top up and bring them back to that $45,000, part of the recommendation was to draw these additional funds from his pension, so from his superannuation account. Once the wife turns 67, all of a sudden both of them receive the full age pension, which again brings them about $40,000 a year. So going forward from when the wife turns 67, we're only looking at topping up about $5,000 from their joint superannuation balances, which again, based on our calculations and projections, would last them their life.
Wow. Okay. A great example of the age pension and the superannuation working together. Like you say, the husband, he's got age pension age. The wife's still a couple of years away, so they're drawing a little bit more down against their super until she gets to the age pension age, and then that kicks in, and he reduces what he's drawn against his super, so it lasts longer. Great example. So thank you very much for that. Jason, on the other end of the scale then, comfortable lifestyle. I mean, here we're suddenly seeing for a single, it's over 48,000. For a couple, it's over 68,000. And now all of a sudden, the funds required are over $500,000 and 640,000. Why is there such a significant change between a modest and a comfortable lifestyle?
I suppose it just comes down to the opposite of what Daniela said. So in the modest lifestyle, your super is just a little bit of a top up. Okay, it's just a little bit of cream on the top. Whereas in the comfortable lifestyle, your super or your assets need to make up a real significant part of the income that you're drawing. Whether you're a single or a couple, it's pretty much close to double what the age. I know we don't go into the age pension rates, but it's almost double what the age pension provides. So you need to build up a really significant amount of funds for that to last you 20, 30 years in retirement to live comfortably and really enjoy that type of lifestyle. So, you really have to build the assets up if you want to afford the comfortable or the active lifestyle.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, as in why there's so much more money that's required, and it's that the age pension is playing less of a role in supplementing their income. So a couple of things that the members just need to be wary around is that, you know, these are models, these are averages, and it's not a distinct mark about you must have 70,000 or you must have 640,000. We're going to go into an example in a moment which highlights that very fact. And again, talking to a number of our members, and a lot of our members live in the regional area, they are living a comfortable lifestyle, an active lifestyle on 50,000 per annum, and it suits them perfectly around this. So going back to a point that Daniela made in her comments was that, you know, the real key to this all is actually doing a budget, working out what are your living expenses. And then that's where we can come into play and saying, okay, if you want this type of income, then this is how much super you're going to need, or this is how long it's going to last for in your retirement years and so forth. So what we're doing at this moment in time is kind of just building a bit of a picture around, okay, what is it that I want to do in retirement? And consequently, what income should I be thinking about? And consequently, how much do I need in super? So let's move into an example. And we call this a retirement health check, and it's available to our members. It's complimentary, it's part of their membership fees. It takes about 30 minutes to do. It's a projection. And what we're really doing is taking into consideration your existing superannuation and what you're doing at this moment in time, and your partners, even if it's held elsewhere. And we're having a look and saying, do you have enough or not? So the best way to do this is like, let's have a look at an example. So we've got a case study here of Barry, who's 59, and Debbie, who's 59. Barry's been working full-time for the last 40 years. Debbie's gone into part-time work in a retail store. They have 4 children. They've grown up and none of them live home. They're all moved out of home. That can be quite odd in comparison to some families at the moment. My kids are still at home, just trying to move them out. They've paid off the home loan, and they're considering about downsizing their house and maybe moving into a 2-bedroom unit. Now, you know, the working life of Barry's accumulated 250,000, and because Debbie, you know, took a career break, she was looking after the children and everything else, and moved back into employment and working part-time, all she's been able to do is accumulate about 25,000. Now, Barry's you know, not on a high salary. He's earning about 50,000 a year, and Debbie's earning about 25. But what Barry and Debbie want to do is they want to retire within the next 5 years. And you know, the question is they don't know whether they've got enough. So let's have a look. If we took all this information and projected it and did a projection for them, where is it that they would be? So here we've got this modest lifestyle. So remembering, we're looking at around about 42,000 per annum. This is what they're needing. The first part of the chart up until age 64, that's Barry still working and you know, paying taxes is what it's really indicating. Then he retires, and so does Debbie. So the green bar is actually them drawing down against their superannuation. It could just be Barry's, it could just be Debbie's, or it could be a combination of both. It doesn't matter, they're just drawing against their superannuation until they get to age pension age. And now all of a sudden that grey bar is representing the age pension, and it kicks in. And as you can see, it makes up the majority of their income. And consequently, they can actually start to derive an income of over 42,000 for their life expectancy, plus a further 5 years. And we really stretch it out. So in this case, based on Barry, you know, their superannuation potentially could last until they're into their 90s, giving them that income of 42,000 per annum. And why? It goes back to, it's the age pension. As soon as that kicks in, it provides them with the majority of their income, and they're just using their super to top it up. The shaded area in the back is the actual superannuation balance and plus other financial assets. And it shows that they potentially have still got over $200,000 worth of financial assets, even into their 90s. And this can be quite a safeguard for them in respect to, as in, yeah, they get into that aged care area of their lives around it. But what if they wanted that comfortable lifestyle? What if they wanted to be more active? They want to go traveling and do all the things that they wanted to do. Well, in that instances, their superannuation is not going to last as long. So it's the same scenario. They retire at 65, they're drawing down against their superannuation they've accumulated quite heavily. When they get to age pension age, it certainly kicks in. But because they're drawing down so much money, they've run out of superannuation by the time they're 75, and they're actually relying on some savings that they've done. After age 76, 77, they're really dependent upon the age pension, and that's why they're going to survive. Now, admittedly, we've spoken to some members, and this is exactly what they want to do. They want to spend all their superannuation while they're fit and while they able to, and they're going to enjoy themselves. And in their minds, they're saying, yep, when I get into my late 70s, early, I'm quite prepared to just live on the age pension if that's what I'm going to be. But it doesn't suit everybody in that regard. And it's this kind of projection that starts to answer many of the questions that members do ask us. And there were some that were asked tonight, as in, when can I retire? Well, a lot of it depends upon what it is that you want to do in your retirement years and how much income. So as you can see, the difference between the two lifestyles can determine when you can retire and how much longer you may have to work for. And also, you know, if I've only got less than 100,000 and I want to retire at 65 and 67, again, in the two scenarios, it's just highlighting the difference between about what is your income needs and consequently, how long is your super going to last for? And how do I know if I can retire financially? And how do I retire in that comfortable lifestyle? So again, it's about this projection. It's about taking into consideration what your superannuation is doing at this moment in time, how it's invested, what you're contributing, and when do you plan to retire, and then how much income is you going to need. Like I say, this projection is available to our members. It doesn't cost them anything. It's part of their membership fees, and it's something that we can run through with a member and provide them a written document in regards to the projection and what the assumptions have been made. But it gives an indication about what it is they can do. So again, you know, what we've done is talked about retirement, what it is that people are thinking about, how they want to live their retirements, how they want to live their retirement, and consequently, do they have enough and their income, and is it going to last long, and so forth. So a few people out there might be thinking about, well, okay, I understand what you're saying to me, and I've got a good feel for potentially where I'm going to be. But what if I need to put in more money? What if I want to boost my superannuation as max as I can between now and before I do retire? So this is what the next section is all about. Well, what are the options available to you? And some of the questions that we've got in preparation for the meeting tonight was one in particular, which is about, well, what's the fastest option to grow my super over the next 15 years? In very simplistic terms, it's about put extra money in, add in more contributions if you can afford to do so. The reason being is it's compound interest. It's the compound effect that has that potentially is going to boost your super to be more. Yes, the investment choice comes into play, but it's more about contributing more. But let's have a talk about contributions and what are the options. So Jason, if we can start off with contributions, what we call before tax, or what's technically known as concessional contributions. Can you explain what these what options are available?
Yeah, so your before tax contributions, they tend to be your more common ones that are received into your super account. And where the wording before tax comes from is that it goes into your super account before you pay any tax personally on it. And it goes into a concessional rate of 15% tax into your super account. So for most Australians that are working or working full time, their marginal rates or their personal rates are higher than that. So that's where a lot of the benefit can be for your contributions, is that it's actually at a lesser tax rate than what you'd pay if you took that money in your hand. The typical type of contributions that are received as a before tax contributions, your employer contributions. So the standard 10.5% super that your employer puts in falls under this before tax bracket. Also, what you can do personally if you're looking to build your super more and above and beyond that is your salary sacrifice, or what we call your additional deductible contribution. So that's effectively sacrificing some of your wage, some additional amounts of your wage that you're going to put into your super account at a rate of tax of 15%. So it's a really good way to build your super and potentially save you a little bit of tax. The unfortunate thing is that there are caps and limits. So we may not be able to salary sacrifice our whole wage. So it's $27,500 per financial year. And don't forget that does include what your employer's putting in as well. There's one little sort of a loophole in a way that you can put in more than that. It's called the carry forward rule. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. But in the most instance, in an ordinary year, you're limited to just $27,500 that you can dip into super on a before tax basis.
All right, thank you very much. And Daniela, after tax, or what we call non-concessional contributions, what are they about, and what is it that you can do then?
Well, simply put, an after-tax super contribution is literally money you add to your superannuation account from your after-tax income, which might include things like take-home pay, any savings sitting in the bank, inheritance, or maybe you sold the house, so you have some assets sitting in the bank. It also covers the super co-contributions. It depends on your wage, you might be entitled for government co-contribution as well. Now, similar to the before tax, there are caps on these types of contributions as well. You can add up to $110,000 in 1 year, or if all of a sudden, I don't know, you win lotto or something and you have more funds laying around, you can consider adding up to $330,000 in one go, but this will trigger the bring forward rule. So it means that for the following 3 years, you can't do any after-tax contributions. This type of contributions can be made all the way up to age 74, turning 75, and even if you're not working. So before, there was a work test that our members or people had to satisfy. From 1st of July 2022, this work test has been removed. So anybody up to age 75 can do this contribution. Overall, it's a really effective way to boost your retirement savings in a very short period of time.
Excellent. And so, that bring forward rule, when is it people tend to think of using it as well?
Well, downsizing your house can potentially entitle you to that. So yeah, if you're selling your house and you're then buying something smaller and you have this extra fund sitting again in your bank account, you can do the contributions towards superannuation. There are particular rules that are linked to how soon you need to contribute these funds after selling the house. But yeah, that's another option too.
Yeah. So yeah, again, so that's a good point. And when people tend to think about downsizing when they're retiring, and as you mentioned before, they may have come into some inheritance, they may have savings behind them, they may have these other funds that are available to them as well, and they want to contribute more than 110,000. So they do this thing called the bring forward rule. The idea about doing it at that point of retirement is that they're not going to have that money again in the future, and they're not expecting any more significant funds to come in. So they want to put as much as they can in at that point in time, and it could be greater than 110,000. And that's what the bring forward rule allows them to do. They just can't, like you say, make additional non-concessional or after-tax contributions for the next 2 financial years in that instance. But you mentioned you can do that all the way up until 75. I mean, Jason, can you do the before tax contributions all the way up to 75?
No, so the before tax contributions, whether you're working or not, you can do up to the age of 65. Now, if you're in between 65 and 75, you have to continue to meet what's called the work test. So it's just basically an activity test to say that you've worked a certain amount of hours in a period of time. And if you satisfy that, then you're able to make those before tax contributions. And I mean, typically most of the time, they're really only beneficial if you are working and have an income in the first place. So there's probably not too many instances where you're not working and you have enough income that makes it worthwhile as well.
Okay. So, okay, great, guys. Good explanation about 2 types of contributions you can make. So, there are the after tax or the before tax. There's certainly around tax. It is the key point to it all. And underneath these 2 types of contributions, there's different ways in which you can actually add additional funds in towards your super. So, let's focus on the before tax, because, potentially most people are still working at this moment in time and they're thinking about, well, how is it that I boost my super before I retire while I'm still working? And so I want to concentrate a little bit more on the carry forward rule that Jason, that you raised before. So here's an example. Can you run us through this and just tell us about what's happening in this table?
So yeah, the carry forward rules are really great initiative that was introduced by the government about 5 years ago. So in the 2018-19 financial year. And the effective purpose of it is to say that, look, a lot of members or a lot of people can't contribute up to that cap. They can't salary sacrifice because, they might be paying off debt, or situation may mean that they can't contribute up to that 27,500 cap this year, but they may be able to in future years given a change of circumstance. So they're not going to be restrictive in that sense, and they're going to allow you basically to use some of the cap that you haven't used in previous years and roll them over. So the first thing first, the important thing around the carry forward rule is that your super balance has to be below $500,000 at the start of the financial year. So if you've got more money than that, the government sort of says, you know, you've got a fair bit there, so we're not going to give you these extra concessions. But given that you may have less than 500,000, these can apply to you. So it started in 2018-19, like I said, and it works on a rolling 5-year basis. So we're in that 5th year now. So any contributions that you haven't used over that last 5-year period basically compound and add up into the current year. So we've got a worked example here of Sylvia. We can see here she had less than 350,000 at the end of the last financial year. And those first couple of years, she was only receiving what her employer put in the super guarantee. She wasn't making any additional contributions at that stage. She may have had a change of circumstances, maybe increased salary, perhaps paid off some debt, whatever it may be. And she's decided that she'll start to make some additional salary sacrifice or conditional contributions. However, she's still not using that full $27,500 cap. So we can see down the very bottom of that table that the carry forward amounts adding up to this financial year, that she's got $67,000 of unused concessional contributions. So she theoretically could salary sacrifice $50,000-$60,000 worth of her income, depending on how much she earns, and save a bucket load of tax by doing this. So it does give you greater flexibility, allows you to really build your super savings in those final years. But like I said, yeah, very important that you do have to have less than 500,000 to be eligible.
So, I mean, you mentioned again, yeah, that's in this scenario, Sylvia's accumulated this unused concessional contribution cap of 67,000, and you made reference to salary sacrifice. And, yeah, to your point, Sylvia might go, I can't afford to do that. You know, what I take home is I need that. So what if she, strangely enough, had $70,000 in her bank account? You know, could she actually use it there?
Yeah, so you can use, and on the previous slide, I referred to additional deductible contributions. So they work the same way as salary sacrifice. It's just done in a little bit of a different way. So you've got that money banked up from whatever purpose it is, and you put it in your super from your bank account, and you basically just fill in an ATO form and say, this is a salary sacrifice contribution. And it works the same way. It washes out, and the ATO and the super fund will class it as a salary sacrifice contribution. It's just done in a little bit of a different way. So it gives, again, another layer of flexibility.
So in that scenario, then all of a sudden, Sylvia's used her own savings and claimed it as a tax deduction, and therefore she's up for a big tax refund because of the tax that she's paid on her wages during the year. So, I mean, would she have to use all that cap in this scenario, all this 67,000, or can she use a part of it? What is it that she can do?
Yeah, so you can use a part of it. Obviously, depending on her income, it may not be beneficial. Like she may be earning 50, 55,000, so it may not be useful to use this whole cap. You can use a portion of it. You can spread it over a couple of years. So, you know, you may look to do 35,000 this year and 35,000 next year or something like that, and manage the cap to your situation and your needs.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said before at the very beginning, this is relatively new. I mean, it came in from memory of 2020-21, but it was backdated to 2018 and 19. So even, we're finding today that some accountants are not even aware of this. So when we're actually making this recommendation to our members, and we do encourage them to talk to their accountant about it, the accountant's going, oh, hang on a sec, I haven't heard of this. And we refer them to the ATL website, and there are all this in black and white. So, we're not making stories up. It's there on the ATL website, exactly what you can do. And they got a similar example as well. But it's one of those things that have come about. It's growing in awareness. Not everyone's aware of it. But, when we talk to our members and when they're going to continue to work for this year or the next couple of years, we raise it with them because this potentially can actually generate, to your point, a great tax return in the last couple of years that they're working in that respect. So thank you very much. But I mean, okay, so this again, we're talking about people that with the cash flow and they may increase their salary sacrifice and take care of this scenario, or they've got the savings in their bank account. But for some of our members, they want to make additional contributions into their super, but they don't have the cash flow, they don't have the savings. So there's something called the transition to retirement. And Danielle, if I can get you to explain this and how this works.
Sure. So a transition to retirement pension, or TTR, as a lot of our members know it by, allows you to supplement your income by letting you access some of the funds from your superannuation. Now, that can happen only once you've reached your preservation age. So anyone aged 58 or more can potentially look into starting a transition to retirement. Now, if you are 60 or older, the TTR pension payments, they are tax-free. If you are under age 60, your pension is taxed at your marginal tax rate, but you do receive a 15% tax offset. So from the tax point of view, this strategy is most beneficial to those who are 60 years or older. Now, once you start a transition to retirement pension, there is a minimum of 4% of the balance and a maximum of 10% of the balance that you do have to draw down every year. So you pretty much have to play with those numbers. There are different reasons to consider starting a transition to retirement. A couple of most common ones, you potentially want to supplement your income if you reduce your working hours. This will mean that you will be drawing some income from your employer and some income from your super, so to bring you back to the original income that you require. Another reason to start a transition to retirement is to boost your superannuation and save on tax while still keeping full-time, or possibly if your income is at a high, healthier level. So depending on what you really want to achieve, we might need to have a discussion and decide which is the best outcome for you going forward.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to come back to this, but I just want to acknowledge we've got 2 questions that come in. For those that raise those questions, we will answer them at the end, and maybe what we've been discussing already is giving an indication around that. So Danielle, apologies, going back to your explanation around the TTR strategy. I mean, again, a lot of times when we talk to members, it really resonates with them when we actually give them a case study, a real example of us dealing with members. Can you talk about a member where you actually gave some advice and utilizing this TTR strategy where they were looking at reducing their working hours?
Yeah, definitely. I had a recent member that I've seen, a guy aged 62. He had $290,000 in super. He has been salary sacrificing $50 a week on top of his employer contribution for a few years now. His current income was sitting at $60,000, but he wanted to reduce his working hours by half. So the new expected income was supposed to be coming down to $30,000 a year. Now, again, reason behind it, him wanting to reduce the working hours is that he would like to spend more time at home. He was looking at some renovation around the house, and he was also interested to experience, I guess, that retired lifestyle. So he wanted to see what a transition into a retirement lifestyle would look, because he was planning to retire fully at age 65. So pretty much he wanted to see if he can manage, if he stops working, going forward, just not to have a big shock when that happens. Overall, he had plenty of hobbies to keep him occupied once he reduced those hours going forward. Now, we talked about his expected lifestyle, and for the next few years, while working part-time, he wanted a cash flow budget of $48,000. Now, if you notice, there is a bit of a difference between his expected reduced salary of $30,000 and what he wanted to achieve, a budget of $48,000. So to accommodate this difference in income, we topped him up with around $20,000 per year, paid fortnightly, just to coincide with his income payments that he would be continuing receiving from his employer. In addition to that, we've also recommended, and because his income is now reduced, we've recommended him to do $1,000 after-tax personal contribution, which entitle him to that $500 governmental contribution as well. So again, overall, he was actually able to continue growing his superannuation while still working part-time. So in this case, by using a TTR strategy or transition to retirement strategy to reduce work hours, the member was able to replace the missing income with payments from superannuation. And he was also over the age 60, so all these pension payments that were happening would be happening tax-free. And again, it's a good exercise for him to experience and to see if he can manage on on a retiring type of lifestyle going forward as well.
A great example where someone's reducing their hours and consequently their income, but they're needing to top it up. And in indirect ways, it's kind of like answers potentially some of the questions that members have actually submitted prior to the webinar tonight around that very question. One member said he was on a low income and he's continuing to work full time. What are the tax breaks associated with it? And you touched on that, how being over the age of 60 and starting his pension account comes in tax free. There's another person who's over the age of 60 and their hours are looking at being reduced to less than 25 hours a week. So again, this TTR strategy could assist them in that area and supplementing their income. And there's another member who's in his mid-60s, and then unfortunately it looks like he's going to lose his job, he's going to be laid off, and consequently he's wondering what he's going to do until he gets to potentially pension age. And again, this TTR strategy, as much as he may not be making contributions, but that pension account may assist him in just helping him through the next couple of years until he gets to the pension age, depending upon what his situation actually is. So great examples. Example that you provided there, and hopefully it also gave those other people some indication about potentially what they should be thinking about doing. So Jason, then let's go back to the carry forward rule, and how could you actually use that strategy in conjunction with this TTR strategy? Can you give me an example where you were talking to a member on that very subject?
Yeah, so it's one of the things we like to do is there's all these strategies and we bring them together and combine them to suit the members' needs. So actually spoke to a member last year who actually came to one of our seminars, and that's where he got the idea from. He thought, I like that, so I might need some personal advice on that. So he was working full time and he was earning a good wage. He was doing shift work. He was earning a bit over $100,000 a year with overtime. So he felt he was paying too much tax and he wanted to reduce this. The member had about $350,000 in super and hadn't been contributing any salary sacrifice or anything additionally other than what his employer was putting in, because of the fact that he was repaying debt and doing some renovations and that sort of thing. So he had a bit of carry forward. He had about $60,000 worth of carry forward available to him this financial year. And again, that was going to flow over to next financial year. So what we did, he didn't have the surplus cash flow. So we used this transition to retirement. And we took close to 10% of his balance this financial year, so about $30,000. And we stuck it back into super as an additional deductible contribution. So it was, again, tax-free income. He was over 60. We've taken tax-free income out and then stuck it back into super and saved him a bucket load of tax. This and next financial year, we saved him around about $7,500. So about 15 grand that we've saved him over a 2-year period. It didn't impact his cash flow, didn't change anything. It was just a transactional thing and saved him 15 grand. So you can imagine the sort of impact that can make in retirement. And like he said, that's a nice little holiday, an overseas holiday for himself and his wife when he does retire.
All right, very good, very good. So another example how this strategy, TTR, is used differently, where someone's trying to minimise their tax but build up their superannuation. And it kind of ties in a little way into one of the questions that we did get asked, and that was, how can I repay my home loan, but also increase my superannuation? Well, this TTR strategy could potentially be used in that instance. You've got to be of preservation age, is the key point to it. And it's really advantageous, more advantageous if you're 60. Why? Because the income that you draw down from the pension account is tax-free. If you're drawing it down between preservation age and age 60, it gets added to your other income as well. So it becomes assessable income, and it could consequently end up costing you more in tax. But yeah, if anyone's interested in how to repay their home loan faster and make sure that's out of the way, then again, we do get asked the question quite frequently, and the TTR strategy is certainly something that can assist the member in their situation in that regards. So thank you very much. Very good examples. So Danielle, let's just go back to downsizing to contribution. You made reference to this before, but can you just give us a little bit more detail about this type of contribution?
So yeah, as I mentioned before, there might be the case when a member might want to sell their house. It might be too big for them. The kids are now, out of the house, too much maintenance, so they don't need a big place. So by selling the bigger house, I guess, and possibly wanting to relocating to a smaller or a cheaper house, all of a sudden they might have these extra funds that they could potentially put into superannuation as a downsizing contribution. Again, there are some limitation around how soon you need to contribute these funds into super to be eligible. But if it's a couple, you're looking at 300,000 each person. So all of a sudden, $600,000 can be contributed into a couple superannuation to again work as a retirement egg nest going forward.
And then to your point, this is in addition to that non-concessional contribution of 110 or bring forward 330. So all of a sudden, members could potentially inject $1.2 million into their superannuation from a sale of a house. I congratulate them if they got a house that's worth and they got that much net proceeds from it. Brilliant. But the main point being is that, downsizing their house and the money that it generates, there is certainly a great opportunity to inject money into the super through the non-concessional bring forward rule, but also, as you described here, the downsizing contribution, which is treated completely different to that. All right, so what we've done tonight is hopefully given the members some thoughts around what they should be thinking about in retirement, consequently what they may be looking at in terms of income, depending upon the lifestyle they want to do. Remembering those amounts that we've shown were averages, and it really is your own personal situation, and we do highly recommend a budget be done to really work out how much it is that you need in that respect. And then depending upon when you are retiring and what that income needs is, we can assist and give you some indication about whether you can retire at your desired age, or whether potentially you're going to need to boost your superannuation. And if you do, as we've seen tonight, there are many different ways that are available to our members on how to boost their super. And in some respects, that's two of the questions that came in tonight, and they're both the same, but I'll throw them to you, Daniela. So one member says he's got some money in the share market. He's 57 years old. What should he do with this?
It's, how long is the string? I would probably suggest to maybe get in touch with us because it does depend on his personal situation, on what he wants to achieve going forward. For some people, sitting in shares outside of super might be more beneficial. For other people, putting money into superannuation might be better. So I'd suggest get in touch with us. Let's sit down, have a proper discussion. We will need to look at the risk profile questionnaire and identifying what type of investor he would be and what he would be comfortable investing in. It depends, again, personal situation, income, what he wants to achieve going forward. So there's a bit more questions that I would want to know.
Yeah, totally agree. To answer that question directly is just impossible. We need to know a lot more about this situation. And for all the reasons that you raised, and plus also if he's going to sell the shares, there's capital gain tax involved. So it may be need to be talking to his accountant in that respect. Jason, something similar. I'll throw this one to you. We've got a gentleman that's 77 years old. He's got substantial amounts of money in his super, and he's just wondering whether he'll get the full age pension.
So we actually have a webinar coming up shortly that you can find that will go into the age pension rates a little bit more. So it does depend on whether you're a single person, whether you're a couple, a member of a couple, are you a homeowner or a non-homeowner. So those questions will, or the answers to those questions will impact what you can get from the age pension, whether it's a full rate of payment, or whether it is a partial payment. So certainly suggest tuning into our next webinar and getting some more information around that.
Thank you. We've got another question that's come in, and this member's asking, and Danielle, I'll throw this one to you. Can I draw out my non-concessional contribution at any time without tax liabilities?
Well, again, it goes back to the age of the person. So if you've reached a preservation age, and if you're over age 60, as part of the pension, there is no tax as such. But the non-concessional contribution, when they were contributed into super, the tax on them were already paid, so they would be part of the after tax income. So theoretically, there is no tax on the funds being paid out to you or to potentially your estate should something happen to you.
Yeah, so I mean, very much to your point, you can't access your superannuation and consequently your non-concessional contribution until you've reached what they call a condition of release. And when that starts is the preservation age, and there's restrictions on that until you do retire permanently from that preservation age, or definitely from age 60. So there's a lot of conditions around about trying to access it. But to your point, goes in tax-free, comes out tax-free. We've got another question, Jason. There's a member that has a couple of 100,000 in their super. They're working and they've been living here for 14 years. Would this be enough for a moderate retirement?
So congratulations on building up 200,000 in super in 14 years. It's a good effort. It really does depend on when you want to retire and how close you can get to that pension age. So just remembering that sort of initial slide that says you need $70,000 to retire on for a single or a couple to live that modest lifestyle. That's assuming that you retire at age 67 because there's a small gap. Now, if you want to retire at age 60 or 59, then perhaps because you're not getting anything from Centrelink, then you will have to build up your assets potentially a little bit more. But that's where our retirement health check really comes into play, where we can figure out what your age is when you do want to retire, what other assets you have, and then whether you can afford that moderate or modest lifestyle.
And remember, there's a retirement health check that's available to the members. So we can always do that as a projection, as in, do they have enough for when they do retire and can live on? So, thank you very much. Another question has come in, and I'll answer this one. And again, it goes back to the point you raised before. In a couple of weeks' time, we're doing a webinar around about people retiring in the age pension and how the age pension works in conjunction with the superannuation. But the question that's been asked is that the person is still working, but their partner, their husband, is 66 and has stopped, and can he claim the age pension? Well, depending upon your husband's date of birth determines their eligibility for the age pension. It's currently at 66 and a half they've got to be before they get the age pension. And if you're born after 1960, you've got to be 67. So the government's pushing up the age pension age in that respect. And to be eligible for you can be eligible for the age pension, but to be entitled to receive an age pension depends on your assets and your income. So it depends upon how much the partner who's still working, how much they're earning, how much they've got accumulated in super, how much they've got accumulated in savings account, and a whole number of things. But maybe for that member, there will be emails and SMSs going out to our members, and maybe they should come and join us in a couple of weeks' time when we talk about the age pension, and in particular the asset test and the income test in that respect. There's another question that's come in. Is it in our best interest to even up our super balances as a couple in preparation for retirement? At the moment, one balance is much higher than the other. What are the advantages? Which one has to go answering that one?
No worries. Yeah. So look, there can be some benefits to shifting money from a Centrelink perspective, particularly if one of the spouse is younger, which again we'll touch on. I think we've plugged our next webinar a few times and enough maybe, but we will touch on that again. But generally, there's no real advantages or disadvantages of evening them up. Some people have a preference to do it, but you can't just combine your super in a traditional sense and move some across. You would have to withdraw some of that money, and then the spouse with less money would have to recontribute that, and that would use up some of your cap as well. So there's a few more complications around it. But yeah, like I said, probably the only benefit is if there's an age gap, and it may benefit from a Centrelink perspective.
All right, thank you very much. There was a couple of other questions which I'll answer that came in before the webinar tonight. One question was someone has a hobby farm, and can they access their super? Again, it comes back to the rules, and have you reached your preservation age, and will you comply with the condition of release? So there's a little bit more to answer in that question, there's a little bit more that we need to know to be able to answer that question in more relative terms. But as we highlighted today, there's potentially the TTR strategy. That person may be eligible for that, and that may assist them in that situation. Another question, and we get asked quite often, this member has got what they call a UK pension, and they want to bring it over and consolidate it. To be honest, that's a real complex area. There's so many factors that come into play. You've got to be over a certain age, and there's tax involved, and you've got to be aware about what you're going to forego in terms of potential income from that UK pension as well if you brought the funds over. So that's a lot more deeper, that type of question, but we will get in touch with that member and just talk it through with them a little bit more in that regards. And the other couple of questions that we've got is a member's asked whether they could bring their investment property into their superannuation. You can't in an industry and a retail superannuation fund. This is what a self-managed super fund actually enables you to do. But you've got to talk to an accountant. You've got to talk to a specialist in that area, because there's capital gains tax that you're going to trigger by moving it from the current ownership into superannuation, and consequently, you could be up for stamp duty again as well. So there's a lot more that needs to be considered in that area. And the other question that we've got is are members able to actually choose the shares that they can invest their superannuation in? With First Super and a number of other superannuation funds, is what we call pre-mixed investment options. So we've selected, in essence, through the fund managers, the shares that we're going to invest in and trade in. There are some super funds out there that allow you to invest in certain sectors, technology, banks, that type of thing. But it's very rare that some super funds, but probably more in the retail area, that actually allow you to select specific shares that you want to purchase using your superannuation funds. And again, a self-managed super fund actually enables a person in which to do that. So unfortunately, we're starting to run out of time, but we just want to thank everybody for coming along tonight, and we do appreciate it. There will be a survey that comes out. We'd love to get your feedback. We're always looking to make sure that these webinars are relevant and answer the questions the key questions that are on our members' mind. There's also the option to get in touch with the financial advice team if you're wanting to just explore your situation a little bit more. But for those that did submit a question, we will be coming back to you, the financial advice team, over the next couple of weeks, just to make sure that we have answered the questions that you did raise tonight. But again, thank you very much for joining us. And remember, for those that could be interested, in a couple of weeks' time, we're actually going to be doing a webinar about people retiring and how it is that they can use their superannuation, and potentially are they eligible for the age pension, and if so, what role will it play for them. So until next time, take care, and we look forward to catching up with you one day. Cheers.